Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Eat, Sleep, List. My name is Matt Johnson, the host of this YouTube channel. Happy Friday to you all. And of course, on this channel, when it is Friday, that means we are making a fun list. Today, List-Ception. That is right. List-Ception, our second List-Ception list. We are talking about video game consoles and also our favorite games on top of it. So it's the quintessential video game list for this channel. Let's get to work. Let's make a list. All right, so this past Monday, on our Mirror List Monday video, please go check it out if you haven't yet, but we discussed the universal language list. And one of the selections on my list was video games and the ability to connect with people through video games. I told a story about Final Fantasy, a video game franchise that I'm very, very fond of and have connected with a lot of people over the years through that. But I didn't expand too much else. One, because I realized that some of my videos have been going very long, and I apologize for that. I have a lot to say, so please bear with me as I get things off my chest every week. But video games has been it was placed highly on my list because it's been a central foundation for my relationship with a lot of people. I've basically been entrenched in video game culture since the day I was born. I believe several weeks ago, I mentioned that there's a picture of me at a young age with my dad sitting in my dad's lap, and he's playing Atari basketball. It's cool. You can see the controller in the picture. But, you know, my dad was basically, he was 22 when he had me. He grew up in the 80s, which was the prime video game era, right? I think a lot of people got hooked on video games, arcades. It was a fun period to be a video game fan. Aside from that crash in '83, but he grew up in that era. So coming into his adulthood and having a kid, like, video games were a connection. That was such an important bond between me and my dad early on. And I may have gotten a little obsessed at times, but for a while, it was, until my brother came along when I was 8 years old, it was really just, I had my sister too. She didn't really play video games much, but video games were something that me and my dad did together. We loved it, right? We started off, I remember the first console was the Nintendo Entertainment System, and then it eventually became a Super Nintendo, and then it became a PlayStation, a PS1, and I still remember that era. But we developed such a cool, fun bond over playing video games together, and it expanded far beyond just between the two of us. You know, my uncle Rich, we would play video games together. My cousin Nico and my cousin Brandon, we would play video games together. It became this thing. Every time we're going over to somebody's house, we're gonna try and play video games together, one way or another. We're gonna try and get some game time in. And it's, I have a lot of fond memories. People say, "Oh, you're rotting your brain out," but I have so many fond memories sitting around with people playing video games. I remember, like, one of my favorite memories when I was younger was, I think it was after one of my sister's birthday parties, and we all went over my Uncle Rich and Aunt Lisa's house, and we were just hanging out, and they had a game called, it was the Fantastic Four for the PS1. If you know Marvel, you know the Fantastic Four. But it was a 4-player, 3-dimensional, side-scrolling beat-em-up with some really cool Marvel characters. And they had this game. And we brought over our multi-tap, and me, my dad, my cousin Nico, and my Uncle Rich would play this game. We attempted it. It wasn't just this one time. That was the first time that I remember, and this was the late 90s. I'm pretty sure it was the late 90s. That's the first time I remember. We attempted to play this game several times over, and there was a lot of cool memories made with it. I just remember getting almost to the final level where you fight Dr. Doom in it. But it's such a core memory for me because playing video games together with other people it's important. I love couch co-op. I love playing video games directly with people. Fantastic Four wasn't the only game we ever played together, though. There was Madden, even though I knew nothing about football at that time. We would have Madden tournaments and like mini Madden tournaments with just our core group, and we just play. Madden 97, 98, 99, some of those early games that are almost unrecognizable compared to what they are. They are unrecognizable compared to what today's NFL games are, but. These bonds, sitting with people and playing them. As I got older, wrestling games became a central focus in a lot of relationships. PlayStation 2 era, getting some of these great wrestling games and getting the multi-tap in. You could have 6 people playing on one game at a time. Are you kidding me? That's awesome. Parties. It was basically a party. Let's all just come on over and we'll all play wrestling games. Like, how sweet is that? And there's been so many over the years. There's been so many over the years. When I had my podcast studio, I knew I didn't want it just to be a podcast place, right? You just come in and make podcasts. I want it to be a social hub for people to meet and bond with each other over more than just podcasting. Video game nights were one of my favorite things to host, and more often than not, nobody showed up, but there were several memorable occasions where people, large groups came. I remember our first video game night. The studio had opened up, and one thing I made very clear is for people to, one, have fun playing video games, and 2, find somebody you don't know and play a video game with them and get to know them. And there were several new relationships created that evening sitting around video games, sitting around a PlayStation 2, a Nintendo 64, a Nintendo Wii. Like, just seeing people just smiling and having fun. It's one of those great universal languages, and I take pride in having those video game nights. My birthday party. Even though I discussed it on last week's quality of friends list that it was a test, but I played for the first time ever. I played Super Smash Brothers Brawl, the new one, Ultimate. I'm sorry, on the Switch with 8 people. We had an 8 people gathering playing Super Smash Brothers, and that is a great memory for me. Just the chaos that ensued from having an 8-person Super Smash Brothers game. Fun memories to be had, bonding with people. I'm a big couch co-op guy. I think I said that already. I'm sorry, it's very, very late. It is after midnight. I just got done watching Elimination Chamber, and I'm very tired, so I may have double said. I always double say something. Who am I kidding? But I like couch co-op. I miss couch co-op. I miss just getting together with people and playing video games. I know online's the way to go. I never really got into online gaming. I just like, I don't know. It's just a different environment just playing with people. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've played video games with probably dozens of different people over the years, and very happy that was a bonding tool. That was a step in our relationship that brought us together. All right, today's lessons from the list. I actually did pretty decent, and I don't think I have too many duplicate things that I've said already, which is we're growing. I'm growing. I'm getting better at this, I promise. First and foremost, video games are just fun, right? It's important to have fun. It's important to find ways and time to have fun in our lives. We talked about the stress of life and how to deal with stress. And one of mine was video games. Video games are just fun. Whether you are playing alone, a lot of people enjoy playing alone. for the most part, I play video games alone, unless, my dad happens to be over and we get some time. We'll play together. I remember when people were visiting, when my son was born, me and Brian played Madden. He spanked me. It was bad. It was really bad. He's very good at Madden. But it's just fun. It's a fun way to just chill out and relax. And video games have gotten me through some very tough times. They've been a nice distraction when my world just didn't seem great. There's a lot of video games out there. A lot of video games have been played under my watch. And literally, I think this, like, there used to be like this taboo about people playing video games, but I think it's becoming more widely accepted now that, there's streaming and e-feds and all sorts of stuff, but there's something for everybody. One of my favorite game consoles, which I'm going to talk about, is the Nintendo Wii. And I remember seeing that, and that was the first time I ever watched my mom play video games, which was awesome. Like, family game night became a thing. All right, we're going to just hang out and bowl together on the Wii. Like, how cool is that? Like, we just stand in front of the living room and play Wii bowling. Or the Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games, or just some of these group party games, and it was just fun, and and everybody found like a way to enjoy it. My mom was like, she didn't necessarily like video games. I don't know if she didn't understand them, but video games weren't her favorite thing. I remember her repeatedly saying how much she hated video games, but seeing her like kind of play, that we got her. She did the Wii Fit. Which is really cool. And, she thoroughly enjoyed that. It was fun watching her do that. Seeing her maybe change her tune a little bit, but even if her overall perception of video games wasn't that great, seeing her be happy and finding joy in playing a video game was great for me. So there's literally something for everybody. My sister, too. I rarely bring up stories about my sister. Not that there's anything wrong between us, but this is a fun one. Like, I remember her getting a Nintendo DS for Christmas one year and getting Nintendogs, right? She didn't really play video games. It was never her thing. I think the only video game I remember seeing her have were those old Tiger Electronics games. That was about it. She found the Nintendo DS and Nintendogs and played that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think she has one of those portable only Switch games too. So I think that's the coolest thing. If my sister and my mom can find love for video games, everybody else can. I promise you that. But yeah, there's so much. There's old, there's new. I love retro. I love old stuff. There's some great new stuff out there, but I prefer old stuff. I have a little emulator station, handheld thing, and I can play video games from Sega Dreamcast back, and it's really cool to have that device. There's just always something for everybody, new and old, whatever you're into. You like things simple. There's plenty of simple games out there. If you like complicated, giant open world things, there's a lot of that too. While video games is still pretty much in its infancy as an art form, it has done exceptionally well growing over the years and becoming more and more accessible for people of all ages, shapes, sizes, whatever you identify yourself with. There are video games for literally everybody. It is time for my top 10. And as I said at the top of the show, we are doing another List-Ception. This is our first, and since the very first Friday that we actually started this channel. We did the movie trilogy List-Ception List, and today we're going to do the video game console / game list. So what this means is I'm going to rank my 10 top favorite video game consoles. Okay? And the way List-Ception works, if you never heard the explanation before, if you didn't see the movie trilogy list, List-Ception is a play on the movie Inception. It is the list within the list. Okay? The list within the list. So for every console that I rank out of these top 10, I'm going to rank or insert my 3 favorite games that I played on those specific consoles. Okay, so there's a lot of entries here. This is going to be a very beefy list, so bear with me. I hope there's some connections made, as always, when I'm talking about some of these fun lists, and not just fun lists, just any list that we do. But we got a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. My top 10 favorite video game consoles / games list. All right, here we go. Number 10. I still believe the idea of this is the future of video games. But my number 10 favorite video game console is the Meta Quest 2, or the Oculus. I bought this in 2021. I remember talking about it for a long time. I tried it over a cousin's house, and I just became obsessed. And I seen some of the games that were available on it, and I bought this thing. And there's probably a good year and a half where I just played this thing nonstop. It was my de facto game choice. Every now and then I still pop it on and play it, but it is one of the most surreal video game experiences I've ever had. And with, as advanced as graphics are now, I think VR and augmented reality and stuff like that, I think that's the future of video gaming, finding ways to insert people into actually playing the games. And the Meta Quest 2 did a pretty good job. They had a lot of original games, but they also ported over some games. But they did a really good job of doing that. A simple bowling game is a bowling game that I love. It doesn't make my top 3 list, but I can put YouTube music on and just stand in my living room and bowl like I did with Wii Bowling. That's crazy cool. Various sports games, they put you in various fictional worlds, sword fighting and all this stuff. But the Meta Quest 2 is my number 10, and my rankings are as follows. Let's go in inverse order, because I do have it in a specific order. Okay, so my C rank or third favorite Meta Quest 2 Oculus game is called Cities VR. And it's basically like SimCity. It's really cool. You can kind of hover over your city and build roads and build businesses and do zoning and create parks. And it's kind of cool. You hover over it and you can actually watch people moving. You can watch cars go by. You got to set up all sorts of different things and try and get your population to increase. And it's really fun. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely a Sims ripoff. But this is the only thing I've seen like it in VR, and it's a lot of fun. My number 2 favorite game is NFL Pro Era. I was very excited when this game first came out to be able to basically play as an NFL quarterback. All right, they do the run out tunnel thing, even though it could be a lot better managed, it could be a lot better utilized. But you're going under center. You gotta put your hands out like this and click the ball. You can legit throw it. Don't throw your controller because they're very expensive. I know. Hand the ball off. You can take off and run with the ball. Do celebrations. Dap your teammates. It is really great. There's some things that they could work on. A lot of players and stuff, they don't feel like they're special. Like, obviously, being a Colts fan, playing with the Colts, and Jonathan Taylor's averaging like a yard a carry. It's not really, that sort of stuff could certainly be improved, but for what it is a heck of a good time. There's all sorts of different challenge modes and skills training and all that. It's really good. And my number 1 favorite game for the Meta Quest 2 is Resident Evil 4. Oh my God. I have beaten and played Resident Evil 4 many, many times over many, many different systems. PS2, the Wii, Switch, PS3, PS4. I'm just obsessed with the game. But nothing touches Resident Evil 4 in VR. Like the ability to just reload your gun, take first aid spray and spray yourself down, using the rocket launcher, using some of the various tools. It is a incredible experience that I cannot recommend enough. If you ever get your hands on a MetaQuest 2, that would probably be the number one game that I'd recommend is Resident Evil 4. It is the OG style of Resident Evil 4, but it is so good. So that is my number 10. Let's move on to my number 9. I remember how hard I worked for this system. The Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color. It was something I was absolutely infatuated with. And I had to earn it. I had to do a lot of stuff and things between chores and amongst other things. But I remember my dad taking me to the store in Buffalo. I can't remember the name of the store. But he took me to the store in Buffalo, and I finally got my hands on one of those clear, purple, transparent Game Boy Colors. And it was my pride and joy. I carry that thing with me everywhere. I was so obsessed with my Game Boy Color. I really was. I looked forward to, we used to drive down to Disney World, and I'd have that thing ready to go. All the batteries ready to go, all my games ready to go, and it made those very long drives fly by, playing the Game Boy, spending time leveling up stuff and things, or just advancing through levels. I do miss it. I really do. I kind of want one just to have it. Like, it's not the same playing emulators sometimes. It's actually having the physical controller in your hands, or having the specific game in your hands that really makes it. But Game Boy Color comes into my number 9. My number 3 favorite game, I actually have a fun little memory with it, is Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. I remember in 3rd grade, I had a really rough morning, and my parents were not happy with me on my way to school. And I remember being surprised. We went down for lunch for class, and I was surprised. My parents ended up coming to have lunch with me, and they felt really bad for whatever it was that I did. And they actually handed me this game, and it made my day. Like, it made up for it. I really don't remember what it was, but I remember going to school feeling awful, and they felt awful about whatever had transpired, and they bought me this game as kind of a hey, I'm sorry. And I was obsessed. I couldn't put it down. It had a little rumble pack in it. And I remember we actually went to, like, Planet Hollywood or Hard Rock Cafe that night too. And I remember just sitting there playing this thing while there. And it's really fun. It was a fun game. That's for sure. But it's a fun story that I have associated with that game. My second favorite is Spider-Man. It was a Game Boy Color version of the PS1 N64 game. If anybody remembers that, it came out in about 2000. I got that as a Christmas gift, and I can't remember who got it for me. It might have been my Uncle Angelo, maybe somebody else. But they got it for me, and I had a ton of fun playing as Spider-Man Shrunken Down. And I remember playing that one on the way to Disney World on one of the trips, and it was a highlight. And my number 1 favorite Game Boy Color game of all time, had a lot of different types of this games from this franchise on the Game Boy Color, but Pokemon Yellow was my de facto one. To me, it's the best version of the original 3, red, blue, and yellow, because it follows the anime. It's the only simple way to get all of the Pokemon on one single game, and to me, it's the superior OG Pokemon game. So that is my number 9. Number 8 is the Sega Genesis. What a cool looking console this was. And, the nice top loader cartridge deck. I think I had the Gen 1 or Gen 2 Genesis. But, those controllers, like, I felt like every house I went to had a Sega Genesis. Every single house I went to. And there was a lot of fun memories surrounding the Sega Genesis. Of course, you got the excitement of its various mascot characters, really good sports lineups, some other great tie-in games. I have nothing but fond memories of my Sega Genesis. I really do. The only thing that I don't like is that I feel like every console gets like a Sega Genesis Classics Collection remake, so it kind of cheapens my memories with some of those games. But regardless, it is my number 8. My number 3 favorite Sega Genesis game was WWF Royal Rumble. It was one of those games where they had it on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, and they both got like 4 different, like there was 4 different characters for depending on which console you got it for. But this was my earliest introduction to professional wrestling, and getting to play as Hulk Hogan as a kid, or The Undertaker, or some of these other ones, and you're just button mashing. It was my first wrestling video game ever, and it was a whole heck of a lot of fun. And simple, very simple to play too. Very, very simple to play. My second favorite Sega Genesis game of all time. This is also an LJN game. LJN is a very infamous game company, but Maximum Carnage. I'm obsessed with this game. It's only one player, but Maximum Carnage is one of my favorite superhero games of all time. It it takes this great comic storyline and puts it into a video game. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. Years later, I actually ended up getting the compilation of the comic book and reading it, and it made playing the game that much better down the road. And my number 1 favorite Sega Genesis game is Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Excuse me. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was my first Sonic game, and I just have an affinity for it. Love the music, love the storyline. A lot of the levels were designed very cool. A lot of good memories from Sonic the Hedgehog 3. That is my de facto number 1 favorite Sega Genesis game of all time. And there it is, my number 8. Number 7, the good old Nintendo 64. Okay, the Nintendo 64. I always wanted a Nintendo 64. I didn't get my hands on one until I moved out and made some money on my own. I did end up buying it in like 2011, 2012 when I moved to Rochester. And I just accumulated every single game I can get my hands on. I have bought, sold, and rebought this system many, many times over. I've held on to my current one for at least 4 years now, and I don't plan on getting rid of it. It is a really great system. I like the awkward controller design. There's some really fun games with it, like iconic games. It's not a very big game library, but the games that I do have are mostly pretty timeless. But I like that it had built-in 4 controllers, so there's a lot of room for party games and playing with other people. But my N64, it comes in at number 7. My 3rd ranked game for the N64, my number 3 favorite, is Super Mario 64. I think it's a quintessential game. I think it's a must-have. If you're looking for a great 3D platformer, this is one. Even though the controller's a little awkward at first, the music is great. I love the Dire Dire Docks theme. It's so peaceful and cool. The environments are sweet. I remember actually playing this game in Sears. I never held an N64 controller before, but I wanted to play Super Mario 64. And when Sears had a video game section, I remember going over to play it. And I was just running around in a circle. I was so confused as to how the 64 controller worked. And Mario only ran around in a circle. My mom's like, all right, that's enough. Come on, let somebody else play. So that was that. My number 2 favorite, another wrestling game on this list, is WWF No Mercy. There's 3 really, really good professional wrestling games on there. There's WCW NWO Revenge, WrestleMania 2000, and No Mercy. But I do find No Mercy to be my favorite one. Between the entrances and the roster of characters, it's a good one. I've done tournaments on my old studio game nights. We used to have wrestling game nights, and everybody would pile on and do a tournament for WWF No Mercy. And it was hella fun. It's definitely one of the more highly regarded wrestling games of all time. And my number 1 is Pokemon Snap. It's like a track shooter, but isn't. I'm a photography guy. I enjoy photography. I enjoy, as a hobby, photography. And Pokemon Snap was really cool. I remember just the absolute desire to play this game as a kid. The Blockbuster commercials. Come play Pokemon Snap and get your pictures printed. And I never got a chance to. So when I finally got that game, I thrived. There were so many cool little angles to work with and so many tricks to get other Pokemon to show up. I adore that game and have beaten it many times over. So my number 7, N64. Moving on to number 6. This is my last, well, not necessarily. Kind of my last handheld only console. Let's just say that. But the PlayStation Portable, the PSP. I was so blown away by this console when I first seen it. On my wrestling tournaments, we had a kid, his name was Frank, and he used to bring his PlayStation Portable. And he had a game that I couldn't believe it was just on a handheld console, and it looked great. It played fantastic, just like the real thing. But I loved it, because again, growing up, I was pretty much a Sony guy from 1996 or 7 onwards. So seeing this thing handheld, how just bulky it was, what a firm grip you had on it. It was so successful. The things you could do, you could watch movies, you can download music, PlayStation Network, you can download video games off the PlayStation Network and play. It was an amazing little handheld system, and I miss mine. I do want to rebuy it really badly. It was so cool just to play that on the go. But my number 6 is the PSP. My number 3 favorite game for it is that game I was mentioning that kid Frank used to bring, Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories. That game hooked me. That was my hook into the PSP. This is a PS2 graphical looking console, and the game is accurate to that. Just all the hijinks, all the fun of a Grand Theft Auto game in the palm of my hand. And I could not wait to get my hands on that. So that is my number 3 favorite. My number 2 favorite is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Again, loving Final Fantasy as a kid. I seen this game come up. It was basically a pre-story, a prequel to the original Final Fantasy VII game. And a lot of cool various story elements, some fun combat stuff. It was a pretty good game. I actually bought it in Virginia Beach while at a wrestling tournament there at Virginia Beach Wrestling Nationals. I found a mall and a GameStop, and I bought that game, and loved it for a long time. And my number 1 favorite, this is a game I replayed over and over again on various consoles, but PSP was the first one I ever had it on, and that was The Warriors. I played the crap out of that game. The fighting was great. The gritty atmosphere was tremendous. I can't say enough good things about the Warriors game. It brought me into loving the movies. Eventually, I played the game first before I seen the movies. So it was cool. See all these prequel levels. I'm getting the behind the scenes on the Warriors, their lore, and then I go watch the movie and everything makes sense, or it seems to make sense. So that is my number 6. My number 5. This is the one of the more modern consoles that I have, but I mostly use it now, even though I play games a little bit. I mostly use it now as a streaming device. I watch a lot of YouTube and Disney Plus, Netflix, all that good stuff on it. But the PlayStation 4. I wanted a PlayStation 4 really, really bad in about 2017. And I remember it was about Christmas time. I didn't get it for Christmas, which is all fine and dandy. So I said, screw it. I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy this thing myself. And I did. I found a nice used one. I bought it. And yeah, I've held on to it ever since. Tons of games on it, a lot of very good games. But it is the ultimate media device. Again, listening to music, watching YouTube, watching movies, then playing these great, fantastic games has been it's great. It's lasted me a long time, and going on 7 or 8 years having this console, which is one of the longer lifespans I've had of just focusing on that console. As far as my favorite games for the PS4, my number 3 is that Spider-Man game that came out. Was it 2018? Good God. the physics and web swinging and the storyline and the fighting, it was so damn good. Very much like the Batman Arkham Asylum games. And there were so many Easter eggs in it, so much stuff to find. They did such a great job. Not a good job, a great job bringing Spider-Man to life in that game. One of the best Spider-Man, probably the best superhero game I've ever played. But Spider-Man is my number 3 favorite PS4 game. My number 2 favorite, the reason why I bought a PS4 was the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Growing up, loving Crash Bandicoot, being central to my video game love and affinity, I knew I had to have this game. So I bought it, and I played the crap out of it, and I still go back and try it every now and then. It's timeless to me. It really is. And my number 1 favorite PlayStation 4 game is the Resident Evil 2 remake. I played the 3 remake on there. I played the 4 remake, which is actually really good. But the Resident Evil 2 remake, that is, to me, one of the greatest video games ever made. I think it's damn near perfect. Remaking the police station and just the whole environment, adding so much depth, adding a lot of layers to the story, and just adding to the horror element of the Resident Evil games. We're going to talk about Resident Evil next week, actually. Sorry you're getting back-to-back video game weeks, but I did find out that next week is actually the anniversary of Resident Evil, the very first game coming out. So I want to dedicate an episode, a video to that. So if you like Resident Evil, that should be a good one to tune into. But Resident Evil 2 Remake rounds out my PS4 top 3 games. Number 4, we're going to stick with the PlayStation. Within Sony, but I'm going to choose the PlayStation 1 here. The PS1 was like the first video game console that I remember my dad buying. I remember I kind of helped push for it. The compact, having the CD-ROMs to play games on, it just had such a cool look. The intro sound, still can just remember it. It's such a beautiful console. I had a hard time narrowing down my top 3 for this list. I really did. But my top 3 are as follows. Crash Bandicoot is my number 3 favorite one, the original Crash Bandicoot. I wanted a PlayStation because of Crash Bandicoot. In fact, I have a picture somewhere. I might even have it on my phone that I took of the actual picture of me opening Crash Bandicoot Christmas Day 1990. I want to say it was 96. It was either 96 or 97. Just obsessed. It was my mascot character. I may have had Nintendo and Super Nintendo, but Mario wasn't my guy. I had Sega Genesis, but Sonic wasn't my guy. Crash Bandicoot was my guy. He was my mascot character. And obsessed playing as him. My number 2 favorite PlayStation game is Resident Evil 2. I won't talk too much about it because I just basically did. And we will talk more about it next week, but it is a tremendous game. I didn't play that till later on. Like, I went back and played it. But to me, it's a crowning achievement. It's really good. It's really good. We'll talk more about it down the road. And my number 1 favorite PlayStation game, going to the Final Fantasy franchise. I could have put a lot of Final Fantasy games on here, but the one that resonates the most with me is Final Fantasy VIII. That is my favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. The characters, the story, the fighting. Was it a perfect game? No. But, kind of where I was at in life, there's relatable teenage characters with all sorts of emotions and thoughts and feelings and whatnot. I associate a lot with those characters, and that I have a very strong affinity for Final Fantasy VIII and everything surrounding it. So that rounds out the PlayStation 1. My number 3 favorite video game console of all time is the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch, again, I had been hearing about it. It's cool. It can be handheld. It can convert it to the TV, which is awesome, forward-thinking. Being able to play on the go and at home is absolutely genius. So many good games on it. I still carry this thing around with me, even though I wish they did a little bit better job of putting out maybe some original games. I played a lot of older games on it. I guess it depends on what you're interested in. But the Nintendo Switch was just such a cool technological just advancement in video games for me, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. My number 3 favorite Nintendo Switch game is one that I actually bought early on. Probably when I first, actually it might have been when I first got it. It's the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu game, which is basically a retelling of Pokemon Yellow, just updated graphics. There's a lot of great replayability factors in it. So much after the beat in the Pokemon League. And I did like that they incorporated Pokemon Go with the catching Pokemon. And you could even transfer Pokemon that you caught in Pokemon Go to the Switch game. So Nintendo and Pokemon have always done a really good job of bridging together different things, like the N64 with the Game Boy. And this did a good job with an app on my phone. Easy peasy. My number 2 favorite Nintendo Switch game is Civilization 6. History buff. Love it. The ability to make certain decisions and make your civilization great, build up your military and take over other countries, travel, get resources, trade. Very, very in-depth. I just seen that 7 came out, and something I'm definitely interested in, and I'm going to have to try out sooner than later. But 6 was great. I spent a lot of time on it, a lot of hours. There's certainly a learning curve to it, but it's right up my alley. It's probably one of the more relaxing games that I've ever played, is that. And my number 1 is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I think I talked about it earlier on. I know this episode's dragging a little bit. There's a lot to it. But Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, it had every single character you could think of, and then some, in every single level. I don't know where Super Smash Bros. Goes from here, but God, that game is so good. And again, to be able to play it portably is fantastic. And the ability to play it on a big screen TV with 7 other people, that's a great game in my opinion. All right, final 2. Number 2, Nintendo Wii. I remember getting excited about this one. I saved a lot of money. I was working at Target at the time and saved money, and it drove me nuts because I bought this game the day before I left for a week-long wrestling camp, 2 hours away from home. But I bought it. I'd been playing it over several friends' houses. I bought it from Blockbuster, and just amazed. The future of video gaming was there, right? Portable, wireless controllers, a lot of it motion influenced. There are so many good games for the Nintendo Wii. So many good games. And that was, again, after years of being a PlayStation guy and, limited camaraderie through video games. I told the story about my mom and my sister and everybody playing. You rally around different fun games for everybody. That was the strength of the Nintendo Wii, and I will never forget that feeling of having it, getting it for the first time. So, my 3 favorite games for the Nintendo Wii: the Lego Star Wars Complete Edition, and I have a fond memory of this one. My cousin Nico had just broken up with his girlfriend at the time, his then girlfriend, and we went and I bought this game, and he came over, had slept over, and we just played Lego Star Wars the whole night, into the wee hours of the morning. I remember we ordered Mighty Taco, which if you're from Buffalo, you know how great it is, maybe. If you're not from Buffalo, it's really good. It's really good. We ate that, and we played Star Wars: The Complete Saga all night, and it's a very fun memory I have of bonding over video games. My number 2 favorite is another one of the reasons why I wanted to get a Wii was another Resident Evil game, The Umbrella Chronicles, which was a first-person track shooter that took you through the events of Resident Evil 1, 3, and 0. Actually, yeah, 0 was a part of it. And they also had their own missions. Cool seeing a lot of these environments in updated graphics from a first-person view. And it felt a lot more authentic. They did have Dark Side Chronicles, which covered games that I liked. games that I liked more, but it felt too scripted, and it didn't hit right. It didn't hit the way I thought it would. But Umbrella Chronicles felt more organic with the gameplay. That you can find ways to just obliterate opponents and not be restrained by cutscenes and whatnot. And my number one favorite is Wii Sports, where I got to play Wii Bowling with family. I got to play Wii Golf, on that console. Baseball. We used to have boxing. I used to go over to people's house. We did Wii boxing nights. It was fun. This was the future. Like when it came out, it's crazy to think that at one point the Nintendo Wii was the most advanced video game console ever. It's wild. No matter how much processing power the Xbox 360 or the PS2 or 3 had, the Nintendo Wii was the most advanced technological thing because of some of the motion controls that it could do. And it inspired a lot of motion controlled ideas from those other companies. All right. And my number one favorite video game console. Yes, we are finally at number one. Thank you for staying with me. My number one favorite is the PlayStation 2. Another console that I've bought, sold, broken, and rebought many times over. What a great library. What a great run. 14, 15 years it lasted. I believe over 1,400 games. If I'm not mistaken, it's an extensive list, and some of the greatest video games of all time came out on the PlayStation 2. I'm sure anybody who's played it doesn't need really an explanation for it. DVD player, that was a big selling point. Started the turning over to DVDs, leaving the VHS behind. The PlayStation 2 we brought everywhere. Hotel rooms, let's plug it in and we can watch a movie at night. Play it on the go, right? It's a little bulky, but still a lot of fun. You got the multi-tap feature. A lot of other cool things along the way, but the PS2 to me is the best game console of all time, and statistics back that up. My three favorite games for the PlayStation 2. Number 3, NFL 2K5. To me, the greatest console football game of all time. The greatest. It's a real shame that EA Sports and Madden have this exclusivity deal. NFL 2K5 was so good, and there's still some things that just Madden just cannot figure out. But it felt so good. I just replayed a season not too long ago, and it was it was so good. It was so much fun. It was refreshing after some of the crap that EA has put out with Madden over the recent years. My number 2 favorite is Star Wars Battlefront 2. I played this one over my cousin's house for the first time. It was mind blown that I can play as clone troopers and battle droids and the Empire and Rebellion and all these vehicles you can play as. And then this one, of course, had the Jedi and Sith, all the various hero and villain characters. To me, that is the greatest Star Wars video game of all time. There's something for everybody in Star Wars Battlefront 2. The OG Star Wars Battlefront 2. I love when I was doing the video game tournaments, I would bond and try to get a game in with somebody over Battlefront 2. And that's why I think so highly of Star Wars. It's such a great unifier because that game, Battlefront 2, brought a lot of people together at those video game nights. Watching people meet for the first time over Battlefront 2 and form these friendships was tremendous. And my number 1 favorite PlayStation 2 game, it is the most violent game. It got a lot of people in trouble. I was not allowed to play it until a very long time after it came out. And I thank my parents for having the wherewithal, the self-control to prevent me from just playing whatever I wanted. But Manhunt is my favorite PlayStation 2 video game. The stealth, the gritty, dark atmosphere, the foul language, the brutality. The game is gross. The game is absolutely gross. It is everything it is hyped up to be, good and bad. scary, just legit, just chill. I still get scared playing the game because there's just so much uncertainty. But I love the environment. I love the presentation of the very first Manhunt, and that is my number one, the PlayStation 2. We got through it, everybody. I know this is another long one. Again, I thank you. Of course, we've been releasing these lists like a week and a day after just the lists. So however you're watching this, whether you're watching it during the initial release or the just the lists release, it was a lot to take in. But I thank you so much for that. I'm not going to talk much more because I've talked quite enough tonight. I am exhausted. I am ready for bed. And again, this was a long video, but we'll be back next Monday for Mirror List Monday and Fun List Friday, the Resident Evil list. That is what we are going to, that's what we got on the agenda. So thank you so much. And until next time, do you even list?